I'd like to propose a toast, my mother-in-law, Eleanor, said, standing up at the head table of our rehearsal dinner. She looked radiant in her designer silk dress, holding a glass of vintage champagne. To Sarah and Mark. May your marriage be as perfect as the wedding I've worked so hard to help you plan. The room erupted in polite applause. Mark squeezed my hand, a look of pure relief on his face. He thought the war was over. He thought his mother had finally accepted me. But as I looked at Eleanor, I didn't smile back. I reached into my purse and felt the cold, hard surface of my phone. I knew something the 60 people in this room didn't. I knew that 3 days ago, this woman had called every single one of our vendors and told them the wedding was off. She thought she had erased our future with a few phone calls. What she didn't know was that I'm a high-end wedding photographer. I know every vendor in this city. And more importantly, I know exactly how to capture a moment that someone would give anything to delete. My name is Sarah. For 10 years, I've made a living capturing the happiest days of people's lives. I've seen it all. The runaway brides, the drunk best men, the bridezillas. But nothing prepared me for my own mother-in-law. I met Mark 4 years ago. He's a pediatric surgeon, kind-hearted to a fault, and unfortunately, the only child of a woman who viewed him as her greatest achievement. Eleanor didn't just love Mark. She owned him, or at least, she thought she did. From the first time we met, I was the help. That's what she called me once when she thought I was out of earshot. Mark, why are you dating the help? Surely there's a lovely girl at the hospital who doesn't spend her weekends taking pictures of strangers? Mark defended me. Of course, he told her my business was successful, that I had a staff of 6 and an office downtown. But to Eleanor, if you weren't a doctor, a lawyer, or a trust fund beneficiary, you were invisible. When we got engaged, the war went from cold to nuclear. Eleanor insisted on helping with the wedding. By helping, she meant hijacking. Every choice I made, she had a suggestion that was actually a demand. Sarah, dear, the lilies are lovely, but our family has always used white roses. It's a tradition. I've already called the florist to let her know you changed your mind. Sarah, that dress is modern. But wouldn't you rather wear my mother's vintage lace? It's only 60 years old and smells a bit like cedar, but it's pedigree. I stood my ground. Gently at first, then firmly. Mark tried to mediate, but Eleanor was a master of the guilt trip. She'd have palpitations or spells whenever she didn't get her way. The breaking point came 2 months before the wedding. Mark and I had decided on a prenup. It was my idea. My business was my life's work, and his family had significant assets they wanted to protect. It was logical. It was fair. But Eleanor saw it as an insult. She saw it as me planning for a divorce before we even said, I do. She cornered me in the kitchen while Mark was at work. You think you're so smart, don't you? She hissed, her perfect facade finally slipping. You think you're going to trap my son into a life of mediocrity. You're nothing but a glorified paparazzi with a ring. This wedding will happen on my terms, or it won't happen at all. I'm not afraid of you, Eleanor, I told her, my voice shaking but my eyes locked on hers. She just smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. We'll see, dear. We'll see. The Monday before the wedding, the calls started. I was in my studio, editing a client's gallery, when my phone rang. It was Chloe, the owner of the catering company I'd worked with for years. Sarah? Hey, I'm so sorry to hear the news, Chloe said, her voice full of genuine pity. News? What news, Chloe? The cancellation. Your mother-in-law called this morning. She said you and Mark had an emergency and the wedding was being called off indefinitely. I've already started the refund process for the deposit, but since it's so late, I felt the blood drain from my face. Chloe, wait. The wedding isn't canceled. I haven't spoken to Eleanor today. There was a long silence on the other end. Oh, Sarah. She sounded so devastated. She said you were too distraught to talk. I hung up and called the venue. Canceled. The florist? Canceled. The band? Canceled. In less than 4 hours, Eleanor had dismantled a year of planning. She'd done it while I was at work, and while Mark was in a 12-hour surgery, unreachable. I sat on the floor of my studio and breathed. I didn't cry. My years of working in high-pressure environments kicked in. I didn't call Mark. He couldn't help me yet, and if I told him now, Eleanor would just play the victim and say it was a misunderstanding. I called Chloe back. Chloe, I need a favor. Don't process that refund. In fact, I need you to do exactly what I tell you. I spent the next 6 hours on the phone. By 6 in the evening, every vendor was back on board, but I gave them one strict instruction. If Eleanor called back, they were to confirm that the cancellation process was complete and that they were so sorry for the couple's loss. Then, I did the one thing I knew would finish it. I went to Eleanor's house. I didn't knock. I used the key Mark had given me for emergencies. I heard her in the sunroom, laughing. Yes, it's done, she was saying into her phone. I recognized the voice on the other end. It was her sister, Martha. The little commoner won't know what hit her. By the time they realize everything is gone, it'll be too late to rebook. Mark will be heartbroken, of course, but I'll be there to pick up the pieces. He'll see she wasn't strong enough for this life. I've even managed to keep half the deposits as consultation fees for the vendors. It was surprisingly easy. I stood in the doorway, my phone in my hand, the voice memo app running. I captured every word. The malice, the greed, the absolute joy she took in destroying her son's happiness. I slipped out before she saw me. That brings us back to the rehearsal dinner. Eleanor finished her toast and sat down, looking like a saint. Mark looked at me, his eyes shining. See? She really is trying, Sarah. I stood up. Actually, I'd like to say a few words too. The room went quiet. I could see Eleanor's eyes narrow slightly. She wasn't expecting me to speak. Most of you know me as a photographer, I began. My job is to look for the truth behind the image, to find the story that people don't always want to show. And this week, I found a story that I think everyone here needs to hear. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the house speakers. You see, planning a wedding is hard, but planning a cancellation is even harder, especially when you're doing it behind the bride's back. I hit play. The recording was crystal clear. Eleanor's voice filled the room. The little commoner won't know what hit her. Mark will be heartbroken, of course, but I'll be there to pick up the pieces. It was surprisingly easy. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Mark. His face wasn't white. It was gray. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He turned to his mother, who was frozen, her glass of champagne halfway to her mouth. Mom? His voice was a whisper, but it carried to the back of the room. Mark, darling, that's a deep fake. She's used that AI software. She's trying to drive a wedge between us. Eleanor shrieked, her voice cracking. I didn't say a word. I just clicked a button on my laptop. The screen behind me lit up. It was a series of emails forwarded to me by the vendors. As the primary financier of this event, I am officially canceling all services effective immediately. I paid for this wedding, Eleanor, I said, my voice calm and projected. Every cent. My business funded this. You weren't the primary financier. You were just the primary saboteur. Mark stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at his mother. Get out. Mark. I said get out. Now. Eleanor's sister, Martha, the one she'd been laughing with on the phone, tried to stand up too, but the look Mark gave her sat her right back down. Eleanor gathered her purse, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, and walked out of the room. No one followed her, not even her husband. The wedding went ahead 2 days later. It was perfect. Not because the flowers were right or the food was hot, but because for the first time in his life, Mark was free. Eleanor was banned from the ceremony. Mark changed the locks on our house and his phone number that same night. His father stayed for the wedding, apologized to me in tears, and told us he was evaluating his own future with a woman he realized he didn't really know. 6 months later, we found out Eleanor had tried to sue the vendors to get her money back, money she never actually paid. The judge dismissed the case in 5 minutes and ordered her to pay my legal fees for the harassment of my business associates. She lives in a small condo now, 3 states away. Mark hasn't spoken to her once. She sends letters, of course. Letters about how we misunderstood her, how she was only protecting him. He doesn't open them. He gives them to me. And I put them in a box. Eleanor thought I was just the help. She forgot that the person behind the camera sees everything, especially the things you try to hide in the dark. If you've ever had a family member try to sabotage your happiness, this one's for you. You are not alone, and you don't have to take it. Hit that subscribe button and join the Karma Unleashed family. Tell me in the comments, was I too harsh? Or did Eleanor get exactly what she deserved? And remember, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be recorded. All names and details in this story have been changed for privacy purposes.